There we go. Put the mic on. G'day, g'day. Just sending out the notifications on Mastodon and Twitter before I run the show. How are you? Good to see you. If you don't know me already, I'm Grant. I'm a bird nerd. I'm also a horticulturist, and I'm bloody well into habitat gardening. Ooh, comment. Hi, Naomi. Did you notice yesterday how I totally butchered your name in the interview with Mick yesterday? I'm really sorry about that. I'll try not to do that again. Um, just let me get these notifications out, and we will get going. Um, all right. Just about to get going. Join in. And I've got to type out the whole web address for Mastodon. How's your preparations going for New Year's, everybody? I've decided, since I've got nothing planned, I kind of like to ignore New Year's. I'm going to tomorrow. I'm going to do a another episode repeat and do this, and then on New Year's Eve we're going to do a highlights of the year based on the survey that we put out, and then I'm probably going to do some replays right through New Year's Eve at different times, and then right through New Year's Day, and pick up on all the different time zones. Because I just remember how many really cool episodes have been that people haven't really caught up with. So I like sharing the love. Okay, let me just do the Twitter one. I've got talking plant selection or bird friendly. I can put a hashtag on that one. Friendly. And life garden. Hashtag habitat gardening. Hashtag birds in backyards. This is how the sausage is made. And I have to go the all right. Is that gone? Yes, that's gone. Let's get into it. Oh, hello! A few more extra eyeballs on the screen. Let me know. Let me know where you're from. I know where Naomi is from. Let's put Naomi's comment back up there again. Naomi's from the Southern Highlands of New South Wales, and Naomi's told us a few things about her garden. I am located in Wurundjeri country, which is the northwestern suburbs of Melbourne. And let us, what do you reckon? I think, is that the best view? Yeah, that's probably the best view. Let's get Holly up on full screen. That might be good. And me. There we are. Can hear me all right? Thumbs up if the level's fine, Naomi. And I'll actually run. Do you want to hear the pre-show that the little chat that we had? Yeah, I'll run. Oh, not the whole countdown. Maybe. Oh, actually, the countdown was pretty funny. Here we go. We'll run the countdown and let some people hear it. This isn't the normal countdown we do. This is what I was doing way back when Holly and I did this conversation. Now you know the rules. If you've got any questions or comments, pop them in. I'm watching this back with you. I can't actually remember everything we talked about, but I think we did about a dozen plants each, and I stratified them. So yeah, let's get into it. I'm looking forward to this.
Live in a second.
Oh, good.
So don't say it's.
How's that audio, Naomi?
You know, as soon as you say that, that's exactly what I've got in my head.
I've been very sweary about the election lately. I can't.
Yeah.
That there's.
Well, yeah.
I can't believe there's nothing being spoken about with. Somebody's joined us. How good's that? Somebody's
cool.
joined us on Facebook.
Lovely.
That was probably you who joined us.
Formally going live in just a little bit. Can't say anything about the election.
How good's that penguin picture, by the way?
We'll talk after.
Here we are. Hey, hello. It's the Bird Emergency. I'm Grant. It says so there, Holly. I know that. Grant Williams, it says so right there. I'm a bird nerd. There, actually, let's have a bit of fun with this.
Ooh.
Right there, that's Holly Parsons, Dr. Holly Parsons. Holly, where are you from?
So I am in Dharawal country. I'm in Wollongong, dialing in today, and it's a nice day today. It's a bit of that autumn chill, but nice bit of sunshine. Thankfully, no rain today. The ground is still very, very soggy.
There'd been floods just before that.
Going to get above average rainfall for most of Australia over the next 6 months. I think was the projection. Some places up to 80% above average rainfall. It was only the southwest of Western Australia that was going to miss out. Now, look, we've got a comment. We've already got a comment. Hello, Kim. I don't know what you were talking about. You might tell us. You might fill us in on that one, because I reckon I say a lot of stuff that people can disagree with, and I'm sure there'll be a bit of it in my top 12 plant selections today, because that's why we're here, Holly, aren't we? We're going to try and go through some of the issues that you have to confront when trying to plant a friendly garden for your neighbourhood birds and animals. I'm going to give you some suggestions so that you don't have to be led by the nurseryman so much that you can go there with a list in mind. And I'm actually going to give you an idea of how to systematically shop when you go to the nursery. I might add, Holly, I've worked in nurseries a lot. I'm a horticulturist. I don't know if people kind of get that, apart from being sweary and ranty on Twitter. And thanks, Kim. Yeah, it's very disheartening that we're in an election campaign and people are latching on to climate change, but we're not hearing anything about biodiversity, which is making me really, really angry. And I can't contain my rage sometimes when people just are ignoring.
Sorry. Doing two things at once. I'll just stop that because if you guys follow me on Twitter, do you remember how ranty and grumpy I was before the election? Because I really didn't think that we were going to get any change. But hey, it was all good, wasn't it? So anyway, here we go.
So, Holly, I think let's start because it's such a big topic. Let's start with some of the things that you have a concern about when we're talking about plants for birds. Let's sort of make it a general topic because there are some issues that can be dealt with, but let's get them up front and centre.
All right, we're going to start with complaints. Excellent.
Well,
all right.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I'd put them in the complaints basket, but I think they're the things that you really need to consider because sometimes. Oh, look, I know I was guilty. I've been guilty of this when I worked in nurseries that were not my own nursery, and a truck will arrive on Thursday afternoon with a whole lot of stuff that the boss has bought on special. And there'll be a whole lot of stuff in there that it's your job on the weekend to sell. Mm-hmm. But stacks of it's got weed potential, for instance. Now, I hated selling it, but it's one of the compromises you make. I would never do that anymore, but I recognise that some people have to make compromises. And because we're a participatory show here, there we are, Kim writes a regular column on Wildlife Friendly Gardens. So this is great. Well, I'll be expecting you to be popping all sorts of suggestions in, Kim, as we go through. Feel free to disagree with me because I'm coming at this from a
Hey, Kim, if you're in the audience now, because I can't tell, hit me up. I want to get you on the show. I think I mentioned that, and I better write a note to myself to follow you up. Sorry for interrupting. I'll try not to do it too much, but I haven't watched this back for ages. So,
urban temperate zone perspective, we did get some fantastic contributions, which we will also sort of go through from all over the country. But Holly,
oh, that's right. I did a survey, and people contributed with their favourite plants or suggestions or questions about spots. So this will be better than I even remembered.
Let's start with complaints while I get my I get those lists up.
Okay, sure. So I guess like you alluded to, Grant, there's the potential when you go down to buy some plants that, you know, the plants that you are buying at a big nursery are not necessarily going to be the best options for your particular garden. So it might not be great for the climatic conditions. There could be issues around their potential to be weeds. And there are a whole range of nursery plants which we know can go rogue and end up in bushland. From a bird perspective, I guess one of the biggest challenges I find is that so many of the plants that are labelled as bird friendly that are at sort of the big nurseries are bird friendly, but they're not necessarily attracting the birds that need help. So we tend to have this sort of oversupply of big, showy, nectar-producing plants like your bottle brushes and your big hybrogravilleas that look absolutely beautiful in the garden, and that's certainly a part of why we want to create a garden, because we want to enjoy it as well, but that attract the big, bossy birds. And so when we're looking at the value of gardens and the urban environment for birds or wildlife as a whole, we want to be creating a balance. And certainly a lot of these plants tend to tip the balance. A lot of the plants tend to tip the balance in the favour of things like noisy miners, which are incredibly aggressive honey eater species. Along the east coast, they will actively exclude other birds from their big territories, and that's usually sort of smaller birds. Or, you know, things like rainbow lorikeets,
excuse me bumping in again, there was some great research that Ross Crates was talking about yesterday about control of noisy miners. So it looks like there is some coming along, and I've emailed out, but of course it's holidays. But hopefully Ross or someone on that research team will join us, early or mid-January. So if noisy miners are a problem for you, there might be some joy on the horizon.
Likewise, probably the most common urban bird in Australia.
Rainbow lorikeets.
And certainly coming out from our surveys tends to be. But, very, very noisy, very, very aggressive. Will outcompete some of the other smaller parrots for hollows as well. So, when you go to the shops and you're guided by a label that says bird friendly, it's a bit misleading because there's a huge range of great native plants out there that maybe are not going to be providing all the nectar, but can be providing great shelter or a really amazing insect life, which is critical for a garden as well. So I guess I'd like to see that bird friendly label widened. To really showcase the huge range of native plants that can provide really great resources for birds.
Well, let's provide some guidelines, Holly, for how people can.
Before we do that, if you're interested, I did a show like this. I'm not sure whether any of you were already here. That I did plants that were for little brown birds, like the thornbills, the fairy wrens and whatnot, shelter plants. I might queue that up for later in the day or tomorrow. If you're interested, let me know. And I'll do that too. I'll just pop that up too, Naomi. Common miner is a big problem. Some councils will allow trapping. I don't know about yours, Naomi, but planting, and actually what we talked about in the Little Brown Birds episode, or what I talked about, is one way to exclude miners. The less sort of open space that you've got that they can turn into a parade ground for their gang, the better off. So we might do a case study on your garden one day, Naomi. What do you reckon about that? Anyway, let's get back. I'll try and stop interrupting, but I think of these things. Is it useful if I throw in a tidbit here and there? God, how bad was I wearing my glasses, by the way, on that day?
Approach it, and I think this will be something that we'll come back to time and time again this year. I think because I don't want to be on a hobby horse about politics so much, but it's a time to take stock when elections rock around. We're going to be in a 3-year cycle, and we're going to be
blah blah blah, grant and politics, blah blah blah,
and then the changes that will be made personally are things that we can do. So if we want to redo our garden, we can make the decisions about sort of a 3, 5, 10-year plan, putting in our preferred plants, thinking about colours, thinking about how it ties in with what else is in the neighbourhood, and thinking about linking up to other neighbours that have got big trees or maybe got lots of dense trees, because birds need a variety of plants and habit spaces, I like to call them. So, Holly, how I've broken this down is into sections, and I picked a couple of plants that I think are good for each section. And I'm going to start with the canopy, with a tree, with a big tree. Now, not everybody can put a big tree in their garden, But if you live on the quarter acre block, the standard Australian housing block, you've got room for at least one, and you need to think carefully about where you site it. And this is where species selection comes in in handy. Some eucalypts are prone to shedding boughs in not only in storms, but also if you've had a really hot day and you suddenly get a cool change. The way eucalypts physiology are, they are designed to detach their branches. So do not plant a big tree over your carport, your house, your gazebo, or your neighbour's carport or your neighbour's house if something is going to um, uh, reach over. But my first suggestion for a big tree would not be a eucalypt. It would be an acacia. And even though acacias live shorter lives, you will get a bigger tree quicker if you plant most acacias. And I would go, my suggestions would be a silver wattle, a black wattle, or the blackwood. So you're looking at, what have we got? Acacia dealbata, Acacia mearnsii, or Acacia melanoxylon, I think, for the blackwood. So for my part of the world, and they would all be suitable in your part of the world, Holly, Sydney as well, right through Victoria, New South Wales, Tasmania, southeast South Australia, they would be my first selection. But there's a downside, and that is for the silver wattle and the black wattle, for mearnsii and dealbata. So dealbata is, I think I've got the right one. They shed a lot of leaves and they can be quite messy, but that's good. That's good.
Messy's a good thing.
If you are not obsessing over sweeping your path or whatever. Actually, let's get that right out of the way. If you're obsessive about tidy paths and stuff like that, piss off, right? It's not the show for you. You are not going to even be considering that. You're going to be out there with your leaf blower at 7:30 on a bloody Sunday morning, and you're going to be the kind of idiot who hoses down your driveway when we've got water restrictions on. So let's just get that out there. Piss off, okay? Otherwise, nice to have you here. Holly, what do you
great.
think?
I will jump in, Grant, just quickly, just so we don't lose a whole heap of people.
Well, we didn't lose anyone. We didn't lose anyone, and we got a thumbs up. So,
I reckon that was you, Naomi, back then.
I absolutely agree. You know, like leaf blowing and things in most cases is not at all necessary in a little block, but you know, there can be a way to strike a balance between a bird friendly garden and a tidier or neater looking garden.
Yeah,
but you can
obsess.
do that.
That's my point. Don't obsess about it. You know.
Yeah, you can do that through pruning
and don't burn your leaves,
shaping plants and creating. And you don't have to have a bush garden.
Plant selection is what it comes down to.
Absolutely.
Like if you're someone who's going to worry about leaves.
Hello, Twitch.
Please don't have a pittosporum in your garden. You know, that's just total hypocrisy. Not that I've got anything against pittosporums, the New Zealand ones or the Australian ones, but just be real. And every time you get too many leaves dropping off, that just means you've got better compost, and you've got a better mulch somewhere else in the garden. So
but back
acacias.
to acacias.
Did you like those? Yep.
I did, and exactly the silver wattle was going to be my first suggestion too. So yeah, look, eucalypts are what we quintessentially think of as the Australian tree, but wattles in a garden are fantastic because they grow so quick, so you can get a bit of bang for your buck early on. It can be really frustrating to put some plants in the ground and you put them in as tiny little tube stock, and then you've got to kind of wait. So, you know, acacias are certainly going to get that canopy established quicker. And, you know, as you said, the downside is that they do have a shorter life cycle, but you can factor in for that. So while those are growing, you can have some other things planted that are going to take over once the acacias have had their day. And they're also great for the soil. You know, they're nitrogen fixers, so they're going to be helping everything else that is to come to establish.
That's right. Apart from the blackwood, both the silver and the black wattle are sort of succession plants. So they're the plants that are first to come back after a bushfire, or if there's been a one of those windstorm events that knocks down trees. They're like a colonizer because of those reasons. They shelter the smaller plants quickly that come up. So they're useful to have in your neighbourhood. But I am going to suggest that if you can find room for a large eucalypt, I think that's a good idea, but be very careful with what you select. Do not put in a Tasmanian blue gum, a Eucalyptus globulus, or something like that on a small house block because they are forest giants. They do not belong, but you can put in a large eucalypt. I'm going to suggest the one of the ironbarks, Eucalyptus sideroxylon. Usually you can get really good shapes from those nowadays. So you're going to probably get a really nice tree. You're going to get an interesting...
Are you taking notes, by the way? Or I'll make an offer to you because you're here. If you direct message me on Twitter or the Bird Emergency at Facebook or on Mastodon, if you're on the Mastodon, let me put that up again. Where is it? So that's where I'm spending most of my social time at the moment. So make a note of that. If you hit me up with DM, I'll actually make a list later on of all the plants we talked about. I think I actually said I was going to do it once before and I never got around to it. But if you'd like the list, and look, I'll even, because you're here, if you message me and tell me whereabouts you are and these plants aren't suitable, I'll actually do a special little list for you if you tell me especially if you've got a spot or a couple of spots in your garden. Remember, Naomi, when I solved your problem, didn't I?
And depending on which variety you get, you're going to get pink, yellow, or white. And the pink can be up to scarlet flowers. They're going to give you nice bark, but they're also got quite a dense...
I'll just bring that back.
A Eucalyptus globulus or something like that on a small house block because they are forest giants. They do not belong, but you can put in a large eucalypt. I'm going to suggest one of the ironbarks, Eucalyptus sideroxylon. Usually you can get really good shapes from those nowadays, so you're going to probably get a really nice tree. You're going to get an interesting tree, and depending on which variety you get, you're going to get pink, yellow, or white, and the pink can be up to scarlet flowers. They're going to give you nice bark, but they're also got quite a dense canopy rather than an open canopy, so you can get a lot of kinds of birds in on them. And if you didn't want to go for that, something like Eucalyptus nicolai, which is the willow, I think the willow leaf peppermint, I think is the sort of the common name. It's a smaller big tree, denser canopy, but again, both of those two are not branch shedders in the way that all of the white gums, the viminalis, the spotted gums, the lemon centers, all those kind of things are branch shedders notoriously. So you minimise the risk. They're my suggestions for big trees, Holly. What do you think of those two?
Yeah, absolutely. So, eucalypts are that sort of staple, that they're providing the great canopy. They're so useful from a perspective of, the flowers, which are great for nectar. They are a hive of insect activity. They, of course, are where you get lerps, psyllids on the leaves that are, lerps are just so critical for pardalotes and small honey eaters and a whole range of little insect eaters as well. Um, so, if you've got the space for eucalypts, they're certainly fantastic to have. And then, of course, you get down the track, future planning for hollows. Um, but it needs to be in the right spot.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets really, really tricky. And if you don't have the right spot for it, that's okay. Don't try and force it just to try and get a eucalypt in the ground.
Well,
Grant, what do you think about some of the like going for like a dwarf variety or some of the various horticulture specimens that are around now?
well, let let's structure how we do this.
Okay.
I'll go through these couple more sections.
Yep.
Then we'll go and look at what the suggestions were on the
Yep.
survey and talk about those, and we'll cover these kind of issues here.
Okay.
Because in a way, I'm going to answer that question with the next thing.
Okay.
Medium small tree would
Sure.
be my next category. So we've got upper canopy, then we're moving into sort of maybe the 4 or 5 meter kind of size tree. And here I've got one standout, Eucalyptus leucoxylon, if you can find it, which is the pink flowering gum. You will see it in nurseries as Gulwa gem. If you can find that, it's a really great one to get hold of. It's got a really nice shape. It's reliable and it's quite quick to flower. So maybe in your third year, you'll get a good lot of flowers rather than having to wait 9 or 10 years like you might for some others. And then my other suggestion in the small tree will be a Banksia. Now this is going to be dependent on your area. Melbourne and Sydney, Banksia serrata. If you can accommodate quite a large, I call it a small tree because they take so long to get really, really, really big. But that's another one where you can look around the different cultivars, and there are small varieties of Banksia serrata, and that is what I would recommend. Will give you fantastic canopy and shade, so they're really good for where you might want to site your compost bin or a utility area at the edge of the canopy of that plant. Be something you'll be able to work under, like you can, and not get. But it will drop a lot of leaves over the year, but you will get fantastic cones. You'll be able to bring them inside. You can cut flowers and for flower arranging, all that kind of stuff. But I think that's a really good small to medium tree. Do ask if there's a cultivar available, because they're out there, and they are superior to the massive one. My view. Holly, yours.
Yeah, look, I think that once you get to that sort of small to medium tree, a whole range of different options open up, I think. And so, I mean, I know I've got coastal Banksias at my place, so Banksia integrifolias,
Yep.
which are not good for canopy because they're kind of they don't sort of have the density in the leaves structure. They're a lot more open, but in terms of they have beautiful flowers on them. Mine are flowering at the moment. They're not going to take up as much room. They tend to grow a little bit more vertical. But they're going to provide a really great resource.
And Integrifolia also has some really good cultivars or varieties. They've been selected for varieties.
Yeah, that's right.
And like you say, flowering now, and they flower through the winter and into the summer. They are a great resource if there are no other nectar plants around. So I totally endorse that.
And I guess the payoff with some of those Banksias too that you don't get with something like a bottle brush or a grevillea as much is the cone at the end. So you've got that great seed pod that cockatoos
food.
are going to come through and use as well. So it just has that extra little resource on the end. of the flowering season that is going to be useful. Have I jumped the gun there too?
No. Can you see number 4?
Yes, I
Thank
can.
you. Serrata or Integrifolia. See, it's
Excellent.
very, very difficult uh, to separate them. Also, all these choices, please, these are not prescriptive. If you've got wet soil, you're going to want a different one, than if you've got really dry soil. But these are just places to start. I might add, I am happy to help anybody with some plant selection issues, but if you want me to do that, you're going to have to give me some information so that I can give you good information back. Large shrub, Holly.
Yes. What have you got?
Um, I've gone for a grevillea here because it's my absolute favourite for many reasons. Grevillea shiricii. Do you know Grevillea shiricii?
Tell me about it.
It's a New South Wales native. It's a coastal sort of New South Wales native. It has bluey green flowers that are really insignificant, but they're held back in the shrub. But it's really dense. It loves shade, will perform in a fair amount of sun. Don't plant it out in the middle of a lawn where it's going to get baked. But near a fence, in that difficult spot in the garden because it's shady, it will perform. But the thing I love about it is it's got nice long leaves that are quite decorative, but it's really dense. You know the Agonis flexuosa nana that is sold everywhere, that is the West Australian peppermint, but the dwarf variety that's really dense. Like Shiricii is like that, but it flowers into the right through the winter, so it's a great resource. But it's dense. It's a shelter plant. It's a shelter belt plant, and it's a difficult spot plant. Doesn't mind getting inundated with a lot of rain, as long as it will dry out. I kind of think if the brush turkey can handle it, Shiricii will handle it. It's that kind of plant. I've got bracketed with it a Melaleuca, so there are dozens of Melaleucas that will do this job, where we are looking at being a shelter plant. I'm not picking a Melaleuca for a nectar or anything like that. It's just because it's a dense foliage plant. And the other one I've selected is Hakea suaviolens, which is the sweet Hakea, I think is its common name, but it's prickly. If you don't prune it, it can become a small tree, but if you regularly prune it, it will be a beautiful, dense, large shrub, and it's a refuge plant. That's how I use it. So, has the other advantages that it can survive being burnt in a fire. So, do you know that one, Holly?
Yeah, my suggestion was going to be Hakea sericea as
they're interchangeable pretty
yeah,
much.
yeah.
Suaviolens perhaps handles the wet feet a bit better. Sericea is native to Melbourne, Gippsland, right through the coastal portion of it's probably the southern half of New South Wales, I think. I'd have to look it up. I don't know how far north it goes, but yeah, fantastic habitat plant for wrens, thornbills, small honey eaters.
Great nesting site. It's that prickly nature is just perfect for small birds.
Yep, so we're agreed on that one. Small shrub is the next category, and I hope that you are understanding how I'm going. It's that layers that we've talked about before, and that birds and animals all have a vertical zone that they live in and that they feed in. Where they breed might be different to where they feed, so we need to think about those those levels. Gee, someone's just messaged me too. How's that, Holly? So, small shrubs.
Mhm.
I've put in another Acacia paradoxa, which is a prickly one. And I've said Leptospermum. And I've left that open because there are literally hundreds of varieties. But again, habitat plant,
Yep.
unbelievably good for attracting insects, which is the main reason that I've gone for it, other than some of the others. A prickly leaf Leptospermum, but if you're one of those people that is really sensitive to the leaf prickles, a lot of people react badly to it. You can pick one of the cultivars, which is from the Petersonii, the lemon-scented group, and there are small ones which have a rounded leaf, still smell nice, and still have the same sort of flower, but won't bring you out in a rash. What's your small shrub selection?
Oh, look, my small shrub selection that I've got in my garden that I really love. I've got a couple. So I've got a Grevillea sericea,
Yep.
which is a pink spider flower.
Yep.
So
From the
again,
Coleroy region of New South Wales.
yes, yeah. So you know, I've said before, when people go Grevillea, they tend to go big, and go big or go home in terms of the flowers. But I think the native Grevilleas, the non-hybridized, like Sericeas or Speciosas, or the one that you mentioned.
Rosemarinifolia, please.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Small flowers, incredibly delicate and beautiful.
Yep.
They are just as beautiful. They're just a small flower, and they're easier for small birds to get access to. A little bit more challenging for some of the bigger aggressive species. And Sericea, at least the pink spider flower, is kind of prickly too. So it's got that little bit of an element of shelter as well. So that's my kind of nectar one.
Beetles
I
love
also.
it too.
Yeah,
Little
that's
beetles.
I get blue-banded bees hanging around mine. Like it's great. One that's really easy to get a hold of is Westringia.
Yes.
Coastal rosemary, you can get everywhere. So it's going to be great for shelter. It grows really, really dense. You can prune it, you can shape it, you can do just about anything to it, and it's going to be creating that really nice dense habit, and is also going to be good for attracting insects. I've got that going in my garden as well. And then what else have I got? Correas as well. It's sort of a small shrub.
Yeah, I didn't put the Coria in over the Leptospermum, and the reason I didn't, even though I love Corias, I think Corias and Epacris,
Yes.
the same. There's a bunch of them. Is that we tend to in our gardens have plenty of options for nectar feeding birds.
True.
Even in a suburb like mine, there's going to be camellias, there's going to be fuchsias, there's going to be a whole lot of things that my neighbours have that the honey eaters will get access to. But the thing that we are lacking and that we've removed from the suburbs is shelter space.
Yes.
Again, because everything's got to be tidy, and bit of a hobby horse. I mean, we've all got those places where the elderly residents sold, the people in their 60s or 70s, and a year later there's 3 townhouses and with one ornamental plant in a pot by the door.
Hey Stan, just got your notification on Mastodon. I hadn't twigged that was you, but I have now. So great. Stan has provided me with a aerial photo from your drone, I'm guessing, Stan. Is there anything you can pop it in here, or you can pop it in Mastodon? Is there a size that you're looking for? I can see a few spaces that look like they could do with some plants in your yard. So, yeah, just give me a little bit more information, and sure, I will get you a list of what we've talked about today that will be suitable for your place, and if there's anything else there. A dozen she oaks, very good. Why do I say that for Stan? Because he's on Kangaroo Island, and because the glossy black cockatoos, which are an critically endangered subspecies on Kangaroo Island, eat them. Okay.
And a couple of bloody mondo grasses along the path, which is just,
let's just
from a horticulturist,
pull that back a little bit.
A whole lot of things that my neighbours have that the honey eaters will get access to. But the thing that we are lacking and that we've removed from the suburbs is shelter space.
Yes.
Again, because everything's got to be tidy.
Ripper.
Yeah, bit of a hobby horse. I mean, we've all got those places where the elderly residents sold, the people in their 60s or 70s, and a year later there's 3 townhouses and with one ornamental plant in a pot by the door and a couple of bloody mondo grasses along the path, which is just, from a horticulturist and garden design point of view, it's the most boring, unoriginal and wasted space you can possibly have. But that's life. Now, I've got 2 more sections, Holly.
Okay.
And then we'll go into the viewer or listener choices.
Okay.
And kick around some of the issues and some of the great choices. I've gone for tufting and clumping for my next 2. And I haven't gone to the species or even the genus level here. But for grasses, I've gone with your local poa or Danthonia.
Yes.
So that's the, in landscape terms here in Melbourne, you'll find Poa labelladieri is being used everywhere, but there's a lot of poas, and you can get the indigenous one for your area. And the other one is the Danthonia, the wallaby grass, flowering at different times and slightly different in their resilience to being cut and clipped and whatnot, but a really good filler and pathway edger. And pigeons love them, finches love them, the wrens use them, so that's, or the fairy wrens, let's be correct, would be my suggestion there. And then on the other side is more the strappy kind of leaves, and I would say the lamandras, again, the species, so many available, and the dianellas, which are the fringe lily? Dianellas?
No.
No, it's not fringe lily.
Patasonia is the fringe lily. What are we calling it? I just call them dianellas.
Yes, so do I.
Lily or whatever they call it.
Flax lily.
Flax lilies.
Yeah, and lamandras are sort of called native flaxes.
Yeah.
Matt Rush. Matt Rush for lamandras.
Go into your nursery and say, what lamandras can you show me? Now, there'll be lots of, I think there was a company called Oz Plants, I think, that went for a whole lot of different designer kind of smaller and bluer, and please, if you can, just buy the regular run-of-the-mill because they set seed. And rosellas love them. Things like red rumps will come in and have a crack at them. And
I will just butt in there too. That's a really important point. A lot of the horticultural varieties of things, especially lamandras, that you'll see, they might be small and they'll be fine leaves and they'll look really nice in the pot. But often the trade-off is that while you get that designer look and they're really nice looking plants, they generally don't set seed. And if you have pigeons and red rump parrots and rosellas, and if you're lucky enough to have native finches, even galahs, that they have no value for those birds. So we always emphasise, if you can get a genuine, just a plain old run-of-the-mill species rather than a cultivar or an improved variety, go for the old species. Unless there's a really good reason to go a different way, like with the Gulwood gem, and it's just a selection of a species. It's not bred up. It's not so it still retains those characteristics. Anyway, back to it.
When they've left a lot of mess, that's when the other birds will come in and pick off what they haven't gone with. So, what are your tufting ones? You notice I've left out kangaroo paws.
A kangaroo grass or kangaroo paws?
I didn't put
Okay.
kangaroo paws in my tufting or clumping ones.
Kangaroo paws are the bane of my existence. I can't grow them. I love them.
I think you're growing the wrong ones then.
I probably am. No, I don't think I've got great drainage where I put them. I think I put them in the wrong spot.
Yeah, which means you need kangaroo paws. The reason I don't recommend them is for that reason, is that there are promo labels on them telling you how fantastic they are, and people will buy them because I've got the red and green one and no, buy the junk. Actually, ring up your local landscaper who is redoing a big area, and the chances are that they've dug up big clumps of red kangaroo paw or green kangaroo paw and are going to take them to the tip. And I say that seriously. Ring up landscape contractors and say, have you got any crap that you're throwing out? Often there will be clumps of lamandras, all this stuff which is no longer popular, or your council might be removing stuff too, and you might find that you can pick up. Don't get agapanthus, but you just treat them the same way. You get in there, you hack them up, and you plant them. That would be my fair bet.
Yeah, look, I've planted some kangaroo paws at my in-laws' place that have just look amazing. The big standard, they are beautiful. I just got them in the right spot there. I've planted them at my place, and 10 k's away, and they're not doing well. It's a little bit too damp where I put them in. So they do need really great drainage. If you can get them to flower, they're just such a lovely statement piece, I think, in the garden. But it's a challenge.
I don't recommend them when we're talking about a choice of 2 or 3 in a category, because again, generally it's not the honey, it's not the nectar feeding birds that can't find enough to eke out an existence. It's generally the other habitat things that we want, and lamandras, poas, danthonias are infinitely superior for providing habitat. In the east.
Yes. Yes. Sorry, WA people.
Well, we would need to do a whole different show.
That's a whole another...
Which we probably will, Holly, when we come to think about that.
I think we should. I think, WA has such a amazing diverse plant range of plants, and
I'd love to do tropical too.
Yes,
because people might have noticed that in my little ad that I was doing on Twitter about doing the survey, I had Grevillea leucopterus was the flower in that, which I grew at my nursery, and it's one of my favourites. It's one of the ones that it's the tropical kind of Grevillea with the long spear with the flower head out on the end, but it's fragrant, and the moths love it. The moths and bats are attracted to the scent, but it's really, really showy. But it's one of those tropical and desert kind of Grevilleas that have those beautiful big flowers that we're kind of saying steer away from. even the Robin Gordons, the Grevillea superbs, the Misty Pinks, all that kind of stuff. They're beautiful, but
They're
they
everywhere anyway.
but but as you've said, they support the lazy birds.
Hmm.
That's the way I see it. I like to see I
And
like to see the hard working birds, and I'm always been a indigenous if you can. But
yes.
there are lots of places in Australia where the indigenous nursery either doesn't exist,
Hmm.
or what is more frequent, doesn't have stock for
Yeah,
the
that's right.
the homeowner because they're growing for Greening Australia or the Reveg Group or a Landcare Group or something like that. So they're generally volunteers or running on the smell of an oily
Hmm.
rag,
Yeah.
and they don't have uh, a showroom, so to speak. So you can't just rock down there and go, "I'd like 75 powers, please." They go, "Sorry, we haven't got any stock," and we should all be growing them ourselves, I believe.
That's a whole nother show,
That's a whole nother
isn't it?
show. That's a whole nother show. My last category, Holly, is
Yep.
ground covers.
Okay.
And I've got one where I've got a definite recommendation.
Hmm.
This is my number one recommendation for most situations, and it's Myoporum parvifolium. And it
Nice.
comes in a couple of leaf forms, but really reliable, very dense forming mat, great for slopes. But it's so good here that in Melbourne here, my local council uses it round the shopping precinct where they have the mall. Bit, and it's in the garden beds. They've been trying Eremophilas as
Hmm.
well,
Oh,
but the
nice.
Myoporums are the ones that handle the foot traffic, people backing up over them, because they can't park their cars, people dumping shopping trolleys on them. Uh, so a really good, useful ground cover.
Hmm.
Will moderate soil temperatures because they are very dense. Um, Again, they will bring in insects, but they have a fruit. So, um, so they've got some use. Pigeons and uh, ground foraging parrots will also um, go for them if they're in the right spot. And my last one in this section is three. I've got you make a choice.
Okay.
Canedia,
Hmm.
and you can virtually use. You'll probably get half a dozen Canedias in your area you can choose from. But please ask the question, is it known for weed potential in your area? Because some of them are
Yeah.
terrible in some parts of the country. So please ask. But Canedias are, they'll give you reward very quickly, and they'll go up, they'll go across, and they're great ground covers. You can mow them
Hmm.
once they get established, which is where they're great for an area around a path or anything. Um, will handle
When I say they can be mowed, and this is also the same for the Myoporum parvifolium, you need it to be on a very high setting, though. Not they can't be mowed close like a pristine lawn, but they can be. You can sort of whippersnipper them or run a slasher over them or a ride on a high setting. They'll handle that, but they don't like. You can't scalp them. So just clarify that.
heavy soils, some of the species, as well as really free draining soils. Then I've said pick a ground cover grevillea if you have that kind of spot. Um, Royal Mantle, even though it's a cultivar, is a fantastic one for a difficult spot in full sun. And I've put a Banksia in because you can get the prostrate grevillea,
Nice.
the grevillea, Banksia serrata. You can get integrifolia,
Hmm.
and then there's a bunch of the West Australians that are ground cover grevilleas, ground cover grevilleas, Banksias, ground cover Banksias, and they would be my third choice in that category. What would you
Great.
pick?
So I've done Canidia prostrata at my place, and they went a little too well.
Well,
So
that's good, but that's good because the Canadia prostrata is. Did you get the Indig
yes, I
one? Were you
did.
able
So
to
the
get
running
local
postman.
local
Yep,
stock? Yep.
local.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep. So you're able to
Um,
get local stock. They
And that you'll find that labelled common name running postman, and there are a few varieties. Again, you try and get the indigenous one if you can. If not, just settle for any. But you'll usually find running postman Canadia prostrata available at any time.
set a lot of seed, but
mhm.
they can be very difficult to find. Like a lot of Canadia prostrata in Melbourne just don't take. And I think the reason for it is that we have improved the hell out of our soils in that the you don't know where your soil has come
Yep.
from if you're in a new area and it may be full of all sorts of fertilizers. It might have been scalped from farmland, or it might have been from where a chook shed used to be. And often I think the nutrient load is too high
Get too
for them,
much. Yeah.
so they don't take. But then you put in something like Canadia rubicundra, one of the red ones from Western Australia, and they will go crazy. Now,
So
I just want to interrupt. Sorry,
yep.
Holly, because we've
You're
got a
right.
comment here,
Okay.
and this has been really topical on Twitter for the UK, and I actually want to
Okay.
talk about it. So,
Oh, hello, Janice.
Hello, Janice from Facebook. Recently saw an article regarding no mow May in the UK, and this has been really big on Twitter in the UK. Don't mow everything. Stop being tidy. Let stuff go back to meadows. That's really the concept that they've had in the UK. Because a lot of the wildflowers of the UK have, over the hundreds of years, been improved into a lot of the 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 flowers that we purchase, primulas and things like that in nurseries. So the idea about being less tidy, Janice, you probably missed the very start of the show where it drives me mad, this compunction to be tidy. As you tidy up your yard, you just remove habitat for insects, which means you remove habitat for reptiles and amphibians and all the birds that want to pop along the ground, all the fairy wrens and the brown thornbills and whatnot, and the scrub wrens that will march along in their family groups and just clean up every insect as they get from one side of your yard to another. So, can we do it in Australia? Well, we've got a different habitat, we've got a different environment. It's harder.
Mm-hmm.
Fire risk is a real problem, and we have so many environmental weeds in the seed bank, in the soil, that if we're not maintaining an area, if we're just sort of saying, "Oh, just let it be," I would say in most places in Melbourne and Sydney and Wollongong, where you are, Holly,
Um,
you're probably
Hi,
not
Sue.
going to get the desired
Naomi,
result. You need
should
to
I
be maintaining the area.
increase the
So I'm
volume
all for
on it?
letting it go, but not if you're not going to be going in 3 or 4 times a year and removing bone seed, for example. Geraniums, agapanthus. Wherever you have an area that
Sue, I
looks
just
like it's unkempt,
lifted the volume.
somebody
Is that
gonna
better?
come along in the middle of the night on Saturday night, going into Sunday morning, because he's just gone and cleaned up Aunt Gladys's agapanthus, and he's going to dump the rubbish somewhere, and then this is a really big problem. It happens in our park across the road from me.
Oh,
That
agapanthus are just
but it's the look. I don't want to use any brand names, but it's your local lawnmower maintenance guys and the people who are cleaning up when they're moving out of places and stuff, dumping crap in the park.
Yeah, so
That
it's
stuff
me.
gets moved
Yeah.
around and falls off trucks as they're moved, and you know there aren't many tips anymore. This is one of the things where, or if you're going to go
Thanks,
to the
Naomi.
dip, to dump a trailer is going to cost you $80, so people don't do it. So let's not grow them to start with. But going back to Janice's point, yeah, a wild, dense, well-planted plot is a great idea. Letting your... I mean, I just like to see the leaf litter and all that stuff. Instead of putting everything in your compost bin, I like to have 10 to 15 centimetres of leaf litter in all the shrubbery areas, under all the trees. That does the same kind of thing. But in Australia, we don't want, in fire-prone areas, an unkempt understory in a residential area and on the fringes. Because every time we have a fire season that is damaging, what that means is that the calls are then out to clear areas of bush rather than maintain fire zones.
Asset protection zones and things.
We get the calls now to go and get rid of bushland. It's just nuts. Just don't live.
I knew what you meant, Sue.
Anyway, that's a whole nother area. Janice, do you want to follow up on that? Because I'm a big proponent for letting it go wild, but that doesn't mean you aren't. It doesn't mean you're not maintaining it.
Yeah, that's right. And there's certainly a whole range of lovely native wildflowers that you could plant out in an area rather than necessarily letting a whole heap of lawn just go nuts. You could maybe try a little bit of like a little patch of lawn and see what grows up, but I wouldn't sort of broad scale.
I am a big fan of the verge, but some councils won't let you do the verge. But hey, check out what Costa's done on Gardening Australia with his verge. Our local council doesn't encourage it, but if you do plant out your verge, they're not removing it. But some councils will remove it, so you need to check.
I'll give a shout out. My council is actually encouraging you to plant out your verge now. They have a great scheme going at the moment, which is really great.
Okay, now here's Kim's contribution. So strategically mow, yes, definitely around that. Leave some areas to go to seed. There we go. Kim, I once designed a water system, a firefighting system for someone who lived in Mount Macedon, and it was to protect a historic garden and whatnot. And it was a irrigation system as well as a fire prevention system, 2 pumps for redundancy, a big tank, controllers, and I think it ran to something like $15,000 when we worked it out. But it had a ring main, so you could maintain it at a high pressure that the CFA could utilise if need be. A portable pump and a fixed pump, 2 tanks, whole lot of stuff. The guy decided against it because it was too expensive, and then he drove away in a $180,000 car. And guess what? He lost his house in a fire. So I don't want to say that to say stupid or he deserved it or anything like that. I'm just sort of saying there are ways to protect your properties if you need to that are a lot better investment than a new car. That's my view. So I would be.
I'm a bit of a bastard, aren't I?
Holly, I could cop some crap about that one. So.
Okay.
Well, have you ever lived in the bush, Holly?
No, I haven't.
Because there's very different things you have to consider when you do. I have, and I grew up in the country, and so that I was in junior fire brigade and all that stuff. I am sometimes puzzled by the choices people make when fire is it's a real live threat. But then here we go, Kim. Yeah, this is, well, Kim said metal high sprinklers with buried pipes. Yes, absolutely. That was what we were using around the house. Rainbird P70 somethings, I think, were the sprinkler, and the Nan sprinklers. I remember those brands. But the other thing too is have that carpet with those kind of sprinklers on around your eaves, which totally protect your house. And if you live in those areas, well, $4,000 or $5,000 for a big tank is a good investment. But you must make it fireproof too. So you need to put a rain curtain on it, otherwise a plastic tank will melt. But
or bury it.
Another thing. We're here not to talk about fires, but there's ways where you can have a wild garden that is not a risk to yourself, and that's really the point I want to get out there. Plant selection has a lot to do with that too, particularly the way the canopies work and the way fires behave. And there's certain plants that you should not be planting.
Need to do an episode on this, I believe.
In fire-prone areas. But
get one of the bushfire scientists in and talk about it.
And I'd be happy to explore that with anyone who would like to, at Bird Emergency on Twitter, or grant@thebirdemergency.com via email if you want to take that up. Right, Holly, we asked people to fill in a questionnaire. The first question, I just said if let's set the scene. The questionnaire was really, you can only pick 3 plants to put in your bird or wildlife friendly garden. What would your first choice be? And Holly, it was fantastic. Almost 40 responses, which I was pretty happy about. Now we're both.
Let me just stop for a minute. Hi, Bev. Nice to see you here. Yeah, look, I live stream every Monday at midday, so you know, and Holly joins me about every fortnight. The next time Holly and I are doing a live together is on the 9th of January, but right through until then, I'm going back and replaying some of our interesting conversations. If you don't know what Holly and I generally do, Bev, is we focus on urban birds, biodiversity, and trying to make the urban setting better. And then in the other weeks on the Monday, I try and keep the theme a little bit like that, but I also do a bit more general stuff. But in the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I'm going to be doing exactly what we're doing now with other topics. And because Naomi wants to hear more of this stuff, later on today I'm going to replay the Plants for Little Brown Birds. Now, I haven't set it up yet, so you'll get your notifications, but I'll probably run that maybe somewhere around 3:30, 4 o'clock. And, of course, you can always rewatch them on the Bird Emergency YouTube channel. They sit up there after that. So let me see what else you've got there, Bev. Now, if you are taking copious notes, Bev, I'm going to do the list so people can get all the plants we had. Bell, Queensland. Where's Bell? Let us know that, Bev. I used to live in Brisbane, and I spent a lot of time in central Queensland, based around Rocky, Yeppoon, and I did my placement for horticulture. Once we'd done all the schoolwork, we had to go out and do 3 months, and I did that at Townsville. So, yeah, lots of different environments. get plants growing. But Bev, nice of you to join in. Welcome to the flock. Okay, let's get this back going. And Bev, do let us know where Belle is and what the environment is. Is it a dry? Is it a moisty? Let us know.
Looking at this, we've got some really good. Someone was right.
Here's
on
the survey.
Your wavelength. Would you like me to sort of quickly run through it and then we'll pick the highlights?
Please do. Go for it.
Okay, so I don't know who the person was who went in and answered number 1 to everything, but that's what they did. But then we've got Banksias, small flowering eucalypt. Well, we've already talked about that.
Yep.
Coria hindmarsh, green coria, which is a beauty. Callistemon, Acacia paradoxa. Now that's a prickly one, which we've talked about. Westringia for the small birds, eucalypts for the big birds. Banksia, Acacia, Grevillea teratifolia, or Grevillea honey gem. Now again, they're big. Teratifolia is an arid, yellow flowered Grevillea, which is a ripper. Honey gem has a flower that looks just like it, but it's one of those tropical hybrids. Then we've got callistemons, and we've got natives, e.g. bottlebrush. A prickly bush, that's the way I like to think, Hakea, Grevillea or wattle. Now, number 14, before we got to lily pillies. Holly, do you have a view on lily pillies? Which are Mina or Syzygium or Eugenias in Australia?
Look, they play a role. I don't have a huge problem with them, provided they're in the right spot. They've got a lovely fruit, so that's good for your little silver eyes or big birds.
Might be a bit
or
cool in winter
for
pigeons,
them.
Some
of the
with you, Naomi.
Yeah, the fruit pigeons and the
fruit-eating pigeons as well.
Much more reliable and a much better choice when you get to Sydney and further north than they are in
where it's
Victoria.
a bit colder.
They can be a heartbreak plant for people in Melbourne, but Acmena smithii, which was the original lily pilly and had a lot of popularity in the 60s and 70s, can be very messy, but also can get very oversized. So that's why I don't recommend it, because often people think they're getting a small sort of shrub. They get sold as a great plant for a hedge.
Yeah. Yes.
Block out your neighbours, and the next thing you know, you've got a bloody...
You've well and truly blocked out your neighbours.
Well, you've got a 10 metre high tree that drops a lot of fleshy fruits, and they stain.
Yes.
So that is one of the reasons I don't recommend it. But if you're up further north, go for one of the syzygiums in the smaller, and there's a lot of them available now, really reliable, smaller, and you can get the white fruiting ones too now, which are, they don't stain. So that's
good. I've got a couple at my place, some of the little dwarf ones growing at the moment.
Can you remember which ones you got?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I literally got them at a discount one day and went, "Oh, excellent! I'm going to grab them while they're marked down." But one of the smaller formed ones, but really reliable, growing really well. Haven't had any major issues with them at all. But we thought really carefully about where they were going to go before popping them in the ground.
Fabulous in a at your door in a big pot. They're magnificent specimen plants. So let me give them a big tick for that. I'll keep going down the list. Grevillea, Silver Banksia, Albany, I don't know which one's correct. The woolly bush.
Nice.
Which is really, really popular now. I would suggest if you have those, prune them regularly and take some cuttings and give them to all your neighbours so that they grow so easily from cutting. Just stick them in you'd have to get a sharp sand to grow them without rotting, but they'll grow in anything, and yeah, they're really, really, really good. Again, a good a good specimen bush. If you can get the upright variety,
Mhm.
great for along a fence or along a driveway too.
I think you can use them as like a Christmas tree
Yep,
alternative. I
yep,
think, yeah, they've got that sort of look about them.
yep. And really conducive to pruning. They shoot really quick. They respond to hard pruning. They're also good uh, anywhere anywhere where you want to block off an quickly something that's sort of three or 4 meters tall. They can really quickly block off up to your neighbour's eaves and stuff like that. So, um, but yeah, but I think they're quite short lived in Melbourne anyway.
Okay.
Bottlebrush, eucalypt, flowering natives, grevillea, salvias. Now that's a really good suggestion. Salvias.
Yeah.
2 people said salvias. Now they're not native.
No.
They are the sage. You can get lots of colours. They grow quickly, but they're great for promoting insects. And some
Yeah.
of the birds, the spinebills and whatnot, will get into them as well. Pretty easy to maintain too. You can let them go to seed, so you can just run them to seed, and you might get in a wild kind of meadow like we were talking about
Yep.
before. They might come back in a herbaceous border. That's what I was looking for. So yeah, really really good suggestion. Our first non-native, and I'm glad that I did mention camellias, didn't I, and fuchsias earlier on. Coria glabra, that's a ripper. Just going through. Someone's mentioned the kangaroo apple. Now that's a good one. Now kangaroo apples are solanums, which are in the same family as tomatoes and the deadly nightshade, all those kind of things. But the kangaroo apple is a native that is one of the first colonisers after bushfire or clearing. So yeah, look good, really nice purple flowers. What else? We've got eucalyptus, corymbias, red grevilleas, bottlebrush, callistemon, grevillea, and then the last one I love, shrubs. Now, neither of us has recommended a bottlebrush. I think bottle brushes have their place, but when I have to pick, like I did in my exercise, 1 or 2 in each category, no, I didn't get one. But in a larger area, like if you've got a half-acre block or something, I reckon you're going to need callistemons, but I would be only doing them as part of a mixed planting, would be my thought. Holly?
Yeah, look, I agree. I didn't put them on my list at all because I think they're everywhere anyway. You know, on any typical suburban block, at least around my place, there
Yeah.
is plenty of them around.
And
Um,
street trees too.
street
like,
trees
you'll
too,
find
that's
them a
right.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of, that's why like a lot of my suggestions, I think like yours, Grant, really focused on insect attracting or shelter providing plants rather than ones that are going to provide nectar. And of the ones that we've suggested that provide nectar, I think they give sort of another bonus as well. They're either being good for shelter or likewise. So yeah, look, I don't have a particularly outstanding bottle brush. There's plenty of options out there. I would just, like you said, Grant, not make it. If you're short on space, if you've got a typical smaller yard, which most of us have now, I wouldn't use the space to put in a bottle brush. I'd be adding some of those other key resources before I'd put in one. But if you have the space and you've got a whole range of insect attracting plants and some really seed attracting plants, and you've got some other things in there, then maybe a bottle brush, added to the garden is going to be okay too. I just wouldn't make them the first port of call.
No, I'm the same. And I mean, there's myoporums and eriostemens and there's just so many
Melaleucas and things too.
That could be used. Now, I'm going to quickly sort of go through some of the interesting ones, because once we went to number 2 and number 3, we're seeing the same things popping up. But there's something here that I think I'm hoping it's changed its name, because I don't actually know it, so I'm going to look it up in a second. But the golden panda was an interesting suggestion here. So how about you give us your thoughts on the golden panda, and another one which cropped up, which I really thought long and hard about, which was the clematis, the native clematis.
Or clematis.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh!
On which school you went to. What do you think about the golden panda?
Look, I mean, they're a sort of a much more northern species, so they're sort of Queensland, subtropical, and warm temperate type plant, type tree. They can grow really large, so they can, I think in a garden they're probably not going to grow quite as large as they would in a natural setting, but you're looking at a up to 10 metre tall tree with this huge flurry of yellow flowers. I think they're probably like some of the bottle brush and things. They've got a good place in that sort of subtropical type setting for some of those larger honey eaters and fry birds, and probably fig birds would come in and visit them as well, I would think. But yeah, what do you think?
Yep. We don't see many of them down here.
Not around here either.
But really, again, really reliable the further north you go. Terrific in Brisbane. But I do sometimes wonder about weed potential with it too.
Okay.
Now, I'm not aware of it, but it's really easy to grow in disturbed soils. So I just wonder about that.
But if you are Brisbane and surrounds and north, then it's it's right in its natural range. So it's a good choice in those situations.
Definitely. The clematis or clematis. There's a couple of native species. A really good choice, I think. In some places, they like a dense sort of semi-shaded situation where they will thrive.
The native ones are an understory plant, really.
Another one you can consider if you're looking for a light climate is the glycine clandestina as well. Dainty. Oh, and the Ballardieras. Let's not leave them out too. They've got a fruit, and yeah, they're all good. I'm not sure I would pick a clematis, a native clematis, for a shady or a covering up kind of purpose instead of a Canedia. But again, that would depend on the aspect. But yeah. Now, Holly, I just want to bring up the other one, which I thought was a really interesting choice for Melbourne particularly, which is the tree violet, or the Melicitus dentatus. So, yeah, nice suggestion. Good get. I'm guessing that I don't know who put it. I can probably match it up if I wanted to, but I'm not going to go to that effort. But that sounds like something that Ben.
I did notice that the other day when you mentioned you had turpentines.
Ben the
Naomi.
botanist. Very nice. Now, in that second list, we've got a couple of others that.
Let's just stop here for a minute. Naomi, you've posed the question, are they good? You know what my answer to that would be? Are birds and animals and insects using them? And if they are, then I reckon they're good. If nothing's using them and they don't serve a purpose in your garden for structure or design, then my view would be there's probably something else you could use. But I don't know. You tell me. If they're providing habitat, I'm all for it.
We haven't brought up before. Hybertias. Again, an excellent, really good for small and clumping kind of plants, really delicate. But you've also got the Hybertia scandens, which is the snake vine, showy big yellow flower,
Yes,
but
good
an
for
excellent
insects.
climber. So yes, can go bonkers if it really likes its spot. Really good for clambering through other shrubs, so would be a good thought. And I like it when people put in "not sure" as an answer. That's a valid answer, and that's why nurserymen are out there. Someone from Western Australia has put the marry, so that's a big tree. I would go for that if, like we were discussing. And there have been a few suggestions for kangaroo paws as number 2. So that was number 2. Let me close that one. Where are we? I'm having trouble.
I was reading off the survey.
One that we haven't talked about that I think was certainly on my list, which I didn't mention in sort of the large shrubs, and I think popped up a few times in the surveys, is Kunzias.
Or as I would say, Kunzia.
Kunzias. Sorry.
And again, you will find Kunzia baxteri in just about every nursery. If
Big red flowers.
Pick the other one, please, because Kunzia baxteri can fall apart.
Okay.
Can be a source of borer for other that will then invade other plants. Very showy, lots of nectar, but there are better Kunzias, and there's a couple that when people got to the third plant, these are where the best suggestions have come in. Would you like me to just highlight a few of them?
Sure.
Well, we've got Banksia marginata. We hadn't talked about that, but again, fabulous for particularly Melbourne and Sydney. I would call that a small tree or large shrub. Fantastic varieties available too.
Ground covers as well.
Tree ferns.
Nice.
Someone's made a comment to me because the question I said, I've severely restricted your choice. You've got one more. So that was number 3, and they put you rotter. But they've got a Eucalyptus chartaboma. Not suitable for most gardens. Pick a small one. And they're suggesting try and get some mistletoe seeds and get that going. That's a really good idea. Euodia is in here. Euodia is an interesting plant. In Melbourne, it's sort of used as an architectural kind of specimen, but I think a bit further north it might be a really good one. But here's a great habitat plant that I'm mad about. The sweet Bursaria spinosa. Great for seed eaters. Great for insects when they're flowering. Has a lovely perfume. Can be rangy and untidy. So if you have a bigger block, it's a really good one. If you're prepared to prune it regularly, anyone can use it. It's a great habitat plant, so I go absolutely with that. Tufting plant, yellow buttons or the crasspedias, beautiful looking. Again, butterflies love them. Beetles also love them. So, um,
They're one of my favourites in my garden, I have to say. Not necessarily directly bird attracting, but great for insects, and they just look delightful. And their little flowers are there all the time. They're
yeah,
beautiful.
and if you don't particularly want the big billy button flowers
Mm.
that you see in all the books,
Mm.
um, buy some seed and spread it, so you get the smaller ones, self sow, and come up. They're less spectacular, but equally as attractive for the insects particularly. But it won't break the bank because a lot of times those you get one plant and it's quite expensive for what it does, and if they get a bit wet, they can fail. So I would look up something like Nindathana or some of the other seed merchants and buy the seed and spread it around. Especially if Kim, like you were saying earlier on, that idea of a meadow or a sort of a wild area, yeah, get some native flower seeds. I might make a list for that actually, Holly, because I need to think a bit more about which ones. But I think that's a really good idea to pursue. So Banksias, Grevilleas, Melaleucas, tea trees, which are the leptospermums, lily pillies, flowering gums. But someone said a strawberry. I like that idea. Tick bush. Now,
Kunzia ambigua.
Oh, okay. I was going to say
Yep.
that's not a sort of a Melbourne kind of common name.
No.
So yeah, okay. So
So
there's
that's I've got that in my garden. That's one of my favourite.
is, is that the white one, the white flowered one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which species is that one?
That's
Let me
Kunzia
go.
ambigua.
Ambigua. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So otherwise known as the tick bush, which I think will
Yeah.
probably put a lot of people off. But yeah, really great for shelter. Really good for windbreaks. A good sort of stabilizing soil too.
Yeah. Again, a succession plant, really
Yeah.
good one.
Yeah, and nice and dense, attracts lots of insects. It's one of my favourites.
Yeah. Lavender is in here as a suggestion. Now, as a sort of landscape garden plant, if you're wanting to attract insects and bees, it's a beautiful choice. Not a lot of utility for many birds, but for bringing in insects, yeah, good choice. Now, here's one we didn't talk about in the ground covers, and I ummed and ahed about it. The Scaevola or Seavola, depending on which nursery you
Yep.
first went to. Terrific. The fan flowers they are, if you're
Beautiful.
talking in
So
common
pretty.
names. Again, try and find a local variety, one that I wouldn't go for the showier ones. I would go for foliage as much as anything else with those. Great pick. I really like number 33, respondent number 33. I don't know who they are yet. Anything that provides good protective cover from cats. And then they put in brackets, because we're in the third choice list. Actually, this should have been my first choice. Yes, I agree. And then the next one was grasses. So people have been thinking sort of outside the box, which I think is
Excellent.
great. Gee, we got some good suggestions there. Now the last, I don't want the last questions. Here we go. Number 3. Oh, Ben Cordis was number 6. Just having a look where people were coming from. Royal National Park, Port Hacking, the Sandstone area.
That would have been Ricky Coughlin, I reckon.
Miranda in Canberra 15 years ago. Oh, that was Julie. 15 years ago, planted native species such as eucalyptus, Banksias, Grevilleas, grasses, Dianellas. I've got to keep going. Nectar producing, blah, 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 blah. Wattle birds, yes. That's all the points she made about the boisterous ones. But she said they now have well-established larger plants offering food and shelter to spinebills and other birds like thornbills, pardalotes, and silver eyes.
Beautiful.
So that's what you have to think about. That's why I approach it as you've got your canopy, you've got your medium, your small. They're going to mature at different times, but as your garden matures, different birds will use it, and some of the residents will use it in different ways. Just looking. Gee, we got some good suggestions. Really good suggestions. I think we might have to do another. We will have to do another episode.
Yep.
Bendigo, Middleton Beach, Dan Fuller from Plants Grow Here, who we've done some stuff with. Dan's in Glen Huntly. We've got a museum curator. Hello, Annette. Landscaper and retired horticulturist. Someone's main issue is providing food for pardalotes. Good on you. Denise, who is a gardener, moved to the Dandenongs 3 years ago, pulled out most of the exotics because all they had were blackbirds and common miners. Yep. That's a very common problem.
There we are, Naomi.
Someone in Kempsey, Penrith. A lot of people didn't put where they were from, and Northern Sydney. So that was really, really good. I appreciate that everyone made those.
We got so much feedback when we did that survey, so I might do something similar again now that the Mastodon audience is going. I touched on this yesterday. Actually, I'm so thrilled about this. I want to go over it again. Now, when I first released the episodes with the Hook Pod, also Cat Young talking about 40 spotted pardalotes, and what was the other one? Andrew Digby about the kakapo. Now they got 100-ish listens. Now, I republicised them on Mastodon yesterday and the day before. And where are we? I'm going to give you these numbers just to give you an idea. In 2 days, I publicised them on the 28th and 29th US time. In those 2 days, Cat Young got 553 downloads of the podcast episode, and Andrew Digby, the Kakapo Recovery, got 486. And today I promoted the Hook Pod episode, and it's had 62 downloads today. So it's staggering to me how good old Mastodon has really increased the amount of people getting on board with what we're all doing. So I wish I could stream to Mastodon. Imagine how many would be in chatting now. That would be great. Anyway, let's keep going. If you'd like to be part of surveys or anything, let me know. I mean, I'll put the work in if people will get involved.
Well, took the time to do the survey and give us all of that info. Now, I think I've just got. There's one more I wanted to look at. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, this one. This is again going through the locations. Looking for where Old Bar in New South Wales. Do you know where that is, Holly?
No, I don't.
Yeah. So we've got Adelaide, we've got Alexandra in Victoria, so that's up near Lake Eildon, Melbourne, Western Sydney, Macleay Valley. So Macleay Valley, is that in the Hunter, up near the Hunter, or is that further north?
I think that's further north. I could be
Okay.
totally wrong.
Might be up Grafton-ish, I think. Collector's one of those towns up near Canberra, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So
Canberra.
Old Bar is south of Port Macquarie, north of Foster.
Okay. So, well, they've... actually, when you think about that area north of there, with all the flooding that happened right up, I really hope that, we don't ever do our plant selections thinking about inundation unless you have a wet spot in your garden.
Yep.
But that's probably going to have to be something we think about more often, because I don't think that flood events are going to be as unusual as we've thought about in the past.
Yeah.
So just going up this list again: Mount Tambourine, Scenic Rim, Brisbane, Melbourne, Albany, Bendigo, Gladstone, Sydney, Eltham again, Melbourne.
How good was all those people getting involved in the
I'm
survey?
guessing that's near Beerwah and the Sunshine Coast hinterland. I'm guessing. I'll look it up in a minute, or maybe Holly, while I'm reading the list, maybe you could look that one up. SPEEWAH. I'm thinking it's going to be near Beerwah, but Atherton Tablelands. We got a Tassie one. Hello, Tassie. Good on you.
Yay, we got one. Good.
Mornington Peninsula, down where I'm originally from.
Just outside of Cairns.
Okay, great. So it's even further north. And then we've got Canberra and Stirling in South Australia. So that was great, I think. It was a good exercise to go through. Let me come back into the studio because I was clicking around all over the place. There we go. Kim's just told us mid-coast near Taree. Thank you. Now, Holly's just... fantastic. Let's do that in a second. Now, all the people with the eyes on us, hello Facebook, hello Twitch. It's not. I like it when we've got someone from Twitch, especially when they're not putting naughty comments in. I tend to find the Twitch people put in naughty comments that I can't read out.
Okay.
Do you have a question, anybody who that you would like to put to us, or a comment? And actually, for those of you who are with us, would you like us to do something like this again and maybe have a slightly different attack on it? Or maybe I don't know, I'd be happy to actually go through and recommend a planting list for someone if they were prepared to give us lots of information. They could volunteer for that.
Just like Stan's getting.
Fun.
Save you a couple of $1,000 with your local landscape designer. I'd really like to get some maybe people from around the country to join us. Holly, did anyone from Birdlife actually give you their favourites? Because that was where we started with this little project. We were going to try and get some of the Birdlife folk who work with different interests, different particular interests, to put some favourites in. Or do we need to?
But
give
they
them a
didn't.
longer lead time.
We need to give them a longer lead time for sure, and I will put the screws on them and get them to give me their favourite plants, because we've got staff all around the country, so they're even if they're working on all sorts of birds in the bush or shorebirds or whatever, they've all got some backyard favourites.
Maybe we can and I'll chase down maybe some previous guests on the show to talk about which plants that they would recommend for their particular fave birds,
Yep.
like for the woodland birds, or if you're in Tassie,
I will do
know
that
that
too. I'll set up
forty-spotted
a
marblade
survey
needs the
for
mannequins.
all the past guests
So
and
what are
for
some good plants that
you
to
guys.
put in the garden if you wanted to
There'll be
plant
two different
them?
surveys, but they'll be on the same page,
You want to have a nice looking garden and a functional garden and all those kind of
which
things
is
that maybe
thebirdemergency.com
help out as well.
/surveys,
Trees
I think.
let's so if you're interested in that, let us know, people, because it's a bit of fun doing something a bit different, and it's a bit like homework for us, and that can sometimes be good. It's nice to complete an assignment sometimes, isn't it, Holly?
Depends what mark you get at the end, Grant.
Oh, well, look, even if you fail, you don't really fail, because it's just an opportunity to succeed next time, right?
Very true.
That's right. Now, so I'm putting the call out again, Kim, and all the others with your eyes on us. Is there anything else you want us to tackle before we shoot off? Oh, let me remind you too that in an hour's time, I'll be talking to Bronwyn Isaac about handling owls and generally some other raptors I think we might talk about.
Oh, and that's actually, that episode's going out in the podcast feed
there's a
and replaying
process.
in the next few days.
But we got the question on Twitter. Dr. Nick on Twitter asked, how do you handle the owls after I put the Bronwyn's Powerful Owl episode out? So I thought, hey, why not extend it more than 240
Amazing.
characters on Twitter, which is what we've done. Thanks, Kim. I'll put that one up. There we go, so you can see it too, Holly.
Thanks, Kim.
It has been a good discussion. Holly, is there anything coming up in Birdlifeville that you want to talk about?
Oh, look, there always is. Off the top of my head, I can't think of much. Birdsandbackyards.net is where I update anything in the Urban Birds team that's coming up. We're going to be doing the Gang Gang Cockatoo project round 2. So if you are anywhere within the Gang Gang's natural distribution and you want to learn about them, go to birdsandbackyards.net and there's a link there. You can register to do a little e-learning course and take some action for Gang Gang Cockatoos. We're just finishing up the first round now and it's been amazing. We'll maybe talk about that another day, Grant.
I should have made a note. Did you see that someone had mentioned me in Twitter, directed something to me and a few others? They'd seen some gang gangs and they were actually in a part of Melbourne that I wouldn't have thought gang gangs would turn up.
Interesting.
So there's always two ways to look at that. Isn't that fantastic? Gang gangs there. Or the other thing is, oh my God, there's nowhere for them to bloody live. So they've turned up where they would never normally be. Yes. So there's always two ways to look at those kind of situations. But if you've never seen a gang gang, you will hear them probably before you see them, and you cannot mistake their call for anything else. Holly, how would you describe it?
Creaking door.
Creaking door. I think of it as opening a red wine bottle that is, 20 or 30 years ago. As you're pulling the cork out.
Ooh. Maybe I need to crack open a 20-year-old bottle of something and test it.
Creaky door, definitely, or the pulling a cork out of an old wine bottle is the. Although who does that anymore? When was the last time you bought a wine? Actually, I can't even think of the last time I bought a bottle of wine. But do they still have corks? Any of them anymore?
Some of them do. Maybe I know a little bit too much about this topic. Yeah, and I've got some old ones stored. Maybe that'll be the next time I open one. I'll be listening for a gang call.
Definitely. Holly, I know we generally do this. We try to do it every 2 weeks, but I'm wondering if you might like to get together. Where are we? Looking at my calendar. Next week, for a particular reason, the weekend following the 14th is World Migratory Bird Day, and I thought perhaps we could give it a bit of a Birdlife Australia flavour and talk about the migratory birds that Birdlife have interest groups or study groups for, and perhaps we could see if we could get a contribution or two from some of the Birdlife.
And of course we didn't.
About migratory birds. So,
I will see what I can rustle up.
Of course, they were all too busy.
I just thought that, because otherwise we'd be doing it a couple of days after World Migratory Bird Day, and I was thinking, what would be the bloody point? And I'm not sure if there's any events, because it doesn't seem to be as big a deal in Australia as it is for the rest of the world. But I've got a couple of episodes coming out. We're going to talk about the prothonotary warbler. I recorded an episode with Jared Hitchens about that. And hopefully, I'm hoping we're going to be talking about cowbirds, which are like cuckoos.
Oh, nice.
Because
I'll be replaying those two in early January.
Prow, which is prothonotary warbler.
The cowbird one was great.
Prow and cow.
We got a bit silly on the prothonotary warbler one.
And any excuse to talk about.
That's a good one. If you have a few drinks, maybe I'll play that on New Year's Eve.
Pitters, which are migratory, and the whole talking about bird strike, and David Tan, who I spoke with, sent me half a dozen pictures. One of him.
So many great episodes.
One of a pitter that was alive, and 4 of them pitters that were dead, that had hit buildings in Singapore and dropped to the ground.
Have to play that one again, too.
And hopefully also cover the Dark Skies month or Dark Skies week, which we're sort of in, but the whole idea and what we can do about that. Is anyone in Birdlife working on that? Actually,
so I've done a bit of work on bird strike in the Urban Birds team. I've had I've had a staff member working on bird strike. So we've got a little resource for what homeowners can do to minimise chances of bird strike around their place. So that's on birdsinbackyards.net if anybody wants to have a look.
I'll hunt that up and link to that too.
Yeah.
Of course, I didn't get around to it.
We did a little project sort of starting to explore how widespread the issue is in Australia. Because we don't have a massive handle on it here, like in the US and through North America.
Yeah, like a billion birds.
With the numbers are staggering, absolutely staggering. Yeah. Actually, so it's definitely an issue here. I don't think we have the same extent because of the way our we
Well, most of our migratory birds are doing the coastal.
They don't.
Thing.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
Another thumbs up. How cool is that? Thank you very much, Kim and Janice. Yeah, thanks, Janice. Dark skies, Holly. That's the last thing. Is that something Birdlife is looking at as an issue that ties in with the bird strike?
Not at the moment, but that's not to say that we won't. It just depends on what our little capacity is like as to what projects we're picking up at the moment. But yeah, look, it's an issue that in the Urban Birds team, is on our radar, and something we're looking in our sort of conservation action planning is around sort of light pollution impacts and strike impacts as well. There's some great work coming out of Melbourne and their light lab down there and the work they're doing.
Fabo. Well, are we locking in next week at midday?
Midnight.
Looks like it.
Okay. Well, then I'll reach out to the light team. Is that the Melbourne Uni team or RMIT?
I think it's Uni of Melbourne.
Do you like how we do our homework live on air?
I will chase that up.
Double check.
You can send me the contact and I'll
yes.
I think we're just about done, aren't we? Let's have a look. Oh, yes, we are. I don't know if we were funny at the end.
David or...
And then we'll have a chat after this, everyone.
There we go. Okay, thank you very much for that. David or Jared, who I spoke to, or maybe Prow and Cow, on to talk about migratory birds, or even the shorebirds. I mean, there's no shortage of it. We could easily, we might have to block 2 hours for that if we get people coming in. Which is it? The shorebirds group mainly in Birdlife that would be looking at migratory birds, or I mean, the swift parrots are migratory. Orange-bellied parrots are migratory. I was hoping we could maybe find an excuse to talk about channel-built cuckoos or something like that too, because they're migratory. So.
Yeah, they absolutely are. Coels too.
Yeah.
Got
to find someone.
Yeah, migratory. Yeah, channel-built cuckoos are urban, so it comes under. It's me again. Yeah. It's just my face. So it's yes, we have a whole migratory shorebirds program, and we also, of course, work on swifties as well. So that's in the woodland birds team. So there's a few migratory species that BirdLife have projects on.
We'll do something. So that's what's coming up next for me and Holly. We're going to talk. We're going to preview World Migratory Bird Day. There we are, and that happens twice a year. So it's the second Saturday in May and in October, I think, is the other one.
It'll be
because
leaving and returning.
That's right. Migratory birds go and migratory birds come back. So
yes.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, been a while, Holly, but we've had a bit of fun.
It's been great.
I hope you found it useful, those of you who are with us, and thanks. And thanks if you're one of the people watching and you filled out the survey. Thanks, because it was really useful. I'm going to use the information to do some more stuff within Bird Emergency generally about plant selection and whatnot. And I'll put it out there. If you hit me up on Twitter or you email me, grant@thebirdemergency.com, and you want some help with plant selection, hey, I do actually know what I'm talking about. I am a horticulturist, and this has been an interest of mine for a long, long time. Of course, Holly's the Dr. Bird. So yeah, between the two of us, we can solve a lot of issues or make some suggestions.
For sure.
Thanks, Holly. Been great.
Thanks, Grant. Absolutely.
And in 45 minutes' time, we're going to be talking owls and catching them and handling them.
Not in 45 minutes' time. I already did that. Okay, well, let's take that's out. There we go. I just saw how long we've been. I have a time limit on doing this, so I'm going to set up the Little Brown Birds replay, so that will come on in, I don't know, maybe about an hour and a half, maybe, by the time I propagate it and maybe have something to eat. So join me then. We'll have a chat then if you are free. If not, I'll be live at midday tomorrow to do something again too. Can't even remember what I said I was going to do tomorrow. I'm doing another habitat gardening one. Can't remember which one it is. So we'll play that. And yeah. Oh, Naomi, I think we had something like 70 people responded to the survey. That was your question from earlier on. So yeah, it was really, really great. Fantastic. I got to go because of the time limit. But you know where to find thebirdemergency.com/live to get the links for the next one when I set it up. And if you come back, that'll be fab. I'll look forward to it. Thanks. See ya.